No,
sorry
I
for
will not.
interrupting.
Don't.
Was
Okay.
that canon?
No. Okay. I'm taking this back. This is not canon. Okay. Everything now is canon. Okay. Welcome to the CBC general election for debate. Here with us, we have 5 amazing candidates. This debate will be in English. Pour ceux qui veulent regarder ce débat en français, passez sur notre site de Radio Canada. Okay. Everyone will be speaking in English. Excellent. Now, as was provided to the leaders was a schedule, which will be determining the order in which people will be speaking. To begin with, we will have Lady Aya from the Bloc Québécois deliver her opening remarks. Aya, you have 2 minutes.
Okay. Hi, so for anyone at home who does not know me, my name is Lady Aya. I am the leader of the bloc and the MP for Laval Gatineau North Shore. Since launching Bloc Québécois last year, last November, I have led it to new heights in a future that only looks brighter for Quebec. The people of Quebec do have a choice this election. As I've said on the campaign trail, as well as we mentioned in our platform, Bloc Québécois represents basically the only voice of stability for Quebec. All these other parties are ones that only seek power, and basically it's only us and the Pirate Party that even contested the last election. And I think the voice of stability and common sense to this election is very clear that is the Bloc Québécois. And sorry, and with all these power struggles of all
1
these
minute.
other parties, okay, of all these other parties, Quebec and our communities have been languishing, and I think there are many bills that even we have supported as common sense bills that have been left to the wayside because of the chaos of these other parties. And I think that Parliament needs a government that actually is one of stability and not one that seeks to throw us off every 2 months here.
Excellent. Is that all?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Aya. Next up, we will hear from the Social Liberal Alliance and their candidate, Alex. Alex, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
Well, actually, my name is Infamous Hole, but thank you very much, Mr.
My
Moderator.
apologies.
I'm very happy to be here tonight. And before I begin, I want to acknowledge that I'm doing this debate on the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations. They've had a major role to play in Canadian history and in taking care of their land. So I want to acknowledge that and express my gratitude for being here tonight. Canadians are rightfully concerned about their ability to pay the bills. They're afraid because of the recent spikes in crime and the insecure world that they now live in. The system feels broken when it continues to produce inequality, deficits, and inflation. These problems are why I launched the renewed Social Liberal Alliance that carries the best policies I've seen during my time in public office, and I want to make Canada a better place. I want to work within the levers of power we have to create a better society instead of succumbing to the temptations of populism. This evening, I hope to demonstrate my commitment to lowering your energy bills, improving global security, strengthening Canada's international role, and harnessing the power of our natural resources to help the climate crisis. I believe that good economic policy is sorely lacking in the status quo, and it's time to get your energy bills, your grocery bills, and your housing bills down. I've been a constructive voice in the House in the past, and I hope that the good people of the territories will entrust me with that privilege again. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Infamous Hole. Next up, we will be hearing from the leader of Citizens and Jack.
Thank you very much, Ben, for introducing me to this stage here today.
As you see by my side, a whole bunch of candidates are vying for Prime Minister of Canada. And they all have one thing in common. While you have struggled with your affordability, they have been in power doing absolutely nothing. I say, as the leader of the only Citizens Party up on this stage, that it is time for us to do something different and actually make Canada a nation we all want to live in. My party is the only party and the first party to propose a new Charter of Rights. We are the first party to propose the right to repair, the right to a shelter, the right to nutrition. All these parties next to me will not guarantee you those rights. They want you to continue to live unaffordably. They want you to continue to not get the nutrition to have a house. We have next to me the so-called renewed Liberal Social Alliance, but we all know who they really are. The elitist establishment liberals, reformed and just as useless as always. To my other side, we have the air quotes People's Party. But which people do they really stand for? Dig a little deeper, and you'll know that they do not stand for you. We have the Conservative Party, so right-wing that they removed the word progressive from their name. They had to know that they were doing something with that. Everyone here talks a huge game, but they've been talking a huge game for 3 elections, for many, many years. And is your life any actually better? I don't think so. If you want to see your life improve, if you
Your
want a
time is up.
better Canada, vote for the Citizens Party.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we will be hearing from Ask Politiker from the CCF. Mr. Sass, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you for the introduction there. I would just like to point out that most candidates have already said, and they probably will say throughout this debate, that Canada needs to change, and that what we've been doing so far has not been working. And I absolutely agree, but let's look at why that is. Canada has had a productivity crisis building for the last 50 years. It's due to a lack of investment, and it's due to an increase in monopolies and a lack of competition. Current economic policies have that's been the cause, and none of these candidates on the stage have been talking about economic strategies that are different from the status quo. We've talked about energy policies and all that. That's not what we need to be doing. That's what we've been doing so far, and it hasn't worked since the 2014 commodity price collapse. That's no longer going to work. We've had a social crisis in Canada. We've had increasing poverty and worsening healthcare. People are dying in Canada. We've had high inflation, and we've had budgets that have been consistently blown. We haven't been able to balance the book for years after we had sustainable finances in the early 2000s. So our government has committed already to several policies to fix this. I did balance the budget and had the largest fiscal turnaround in Canadian history as finance minister. That'll continue. We have a balanced budget plan that will balance the budget at a $10 billion surplus. And that's mostly because we're introducing because we did have a $20 billion surplus before. We will be introducing universal basic pharmacare for people. We're going to address poverty in Canada, cut it in half in a single year with guaranteed basic income. We're going to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. We're looking to have no distortions in our market from government, to lower taxes, to balance our books, and to have better services. We've already cut taxes. Myself and government cut taxes by $11.2 billion. We have a plan to cut taxes again. And that plan involves reforming the GST and making us more competitive on the international stage and attracting more investment. This plan will grow GDP over the next 5 years, $4.5 billion more every single year.
Your time is up.
We've assumed. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next up, we will be hearing from a Game of Power from the People's Party. You have 2 minutes.
Bonjour à tous et merci m'avoir écouté ce soir. Malheureusement, je ne suis pas autorisé à continuer en français, donc je vais continuer en anglais. So I just heard from the Citizens Party, and they just mentioned right to repair, which, if I remember correctly, was one of the bills that passed months ago. Then I hear from the party led by the former prime minister, giving his wish list as a list of accomplishments, which Is that really what you're going to do? Did that budget pass? I don't seem to remember a budget passing, but yet it seems like there's a campaign based on what was already done. So I'm a bit confused here at the face that's being shown to the Canadian people. Now that I've kind of gotten some stuff out of the way, why don't I talk a bit about People's Party policy? Now we are built out of some of the biggest, like most numerous sponsor of bills. My good friend Freedom Canada 2025 last Parliament was one of the biggest sponsor and author of bills. I myself have written many bills, and so has our good friend Zuck 236. This is a party that will work for the Canadian people. They have shown that they will put in the effort for the Canadian people, and I hope that we will see them all in Parliament in the coming term. I'm going to cut my minute here short, and then we'll move on to the next statement. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now, before we begin the next topic, I will be engaging with social media, which is obviously very popular, and noting that there has been discussion about the Social Liberal Party and the citizens. I'm not going to read out the tweets as they could be defamatory. Okay, next topic is healthcare, and we will begin by allowing Mr. Infamous Hole to give his 1 minute, or his 2 minute statement, rather. Mr. Infamous Hole, you have time to begin now.
Well, before I begin, I want to ask you, did you say we have to respond to a tweet, or am I just going with my healthcare plan?
Are you there, sir?
Hello?
Okay.
Yes? No, I'm asking, do I need to respond to the tweet?
Mr. Jack, if you would not mind taking over while we attempt to reconnect his
Excuse me?
microphone.
My
Statement on
microphone's
healthcare, 2 minutes.
No, my
Thank
microphone's
you.
completely on. Do you not hear me?
We hear you. I hear
Yeah,
you.
my microphone's been fine this entire time.
Say
Oh.
pineapple if you hear us.
Yeah, I hear.
Oh. Oh. That's strange. Just go ahead. Go ahead. 2 minutes starts now. Thank you.
Me?
No, Jack. Alex.
Like-
Okay, well, it seems like the debate hasn't even started when things are already going wrong. But health is largely a provincial jurisdiction, but I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of areas where the federal government can step in if we want to help the citizens. I'm proposing to designate a day in the summer as a national holiday for exercise. I know that not everybody's going to adhere to it, but if we make it a statutory holiday, it's going to be in the public's eye and it'll encourage people to do so. I also think that healthy dieting, healthy eating habits, healthy habits in general, access to doctors, exercise, and moderation when using electronics are all values that we should be instilling in the younger generation in the classroom. Another area where the federal government can help provinces is Ontario has a non-essential health line called 811 where you can get medical advice. I want to work with the premiers to expand that nationwide. I also think that health transfers are an essential part of the system, and I want to talk to the premiers and recommend that they incentivize people to study in nursing and healthcare at the post-secondary level. but and but when it comes to immigration, it's a great solution, but we need to be realistic and recognize that foreign credentials have a hard time being recognized domestically. I want to change that by providing a refugee passport that lists these credentials in a simple way. And finally, I think that we need to get rid of systemic discrimination that prevents people with a non-Anglo name from being hired because of a fear that they can't speak English. I think it's stopping a lot of foreign workers from finding high-quality jobs, and we need to make sure that we fix the problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and I apologize for the technical errors taking place. Yes, okay. Next up will be Jack. 2 minutes on healthcare. Your time begins now.
Thank you very much for the time to speak on this issue. Next to me is the establishment liberals. Now let me tell you a little story here. You are a poor family, and you have to choose between your kid's teeth rotting out or you getting food on the table. And Mr. Captain Establishment over here wants to give you a holiday so that you can go outside and get exercise. He wants to teach your kid to use his device less. He wants to expand a health line for you to get healthcare help instead of actually paying for your healthcare. The only party on this stage stares at other candidates that wants to make sure that you can always have access to healthcare no matter what is the Citizens Party. We're not concerned with flimsy name fixing problems. We are concerned with the real issues. There is only one Citizens Party on this stage. It's not the conservatives. They want to cut your healthcare. It's not the People's Party. They don't even know what healthcare means. It's the Citizens Party. We're the only ones with true universal. We don't lie when we say universal. We mean it. And I'm staring right at you, people through the television set. If you vote for Citizens, I promise you personally that you will get all your healthcare covered. You'll never have to choose between buying food and fixing your teeth, between getting glasses and being able to fix your car. You will always, always be able to rely on Canada to keep you healthy. Thank you very much for the time. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Next up, we will be hearing from Lady Aya and the Bloc Québécois. 2 minutes on healthcare. You may begin when you are ready.
Well, I think this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, but as Bloc Québécois is party of Quebec and for Quebec, we firmly believe that healthcare should primarily lie within the provinces, and I definitely, in contrast to some people on this stage, I definitely think that there are some things the federal government should at the very least keep our hands off here. I also must disagree with the liberals here about the national holiday to get people out. That's not what people. For one, I don't think that the cost of having another holiday is something I agree with. But then also, most people are not going to be actually doing that to get outside there. You might have a few, but I don't think it is worth the cost for some sort of virtue signaling, get out there and exercise day.
Is that all?
Yes.
Okay. Rishi, thank you very much. Next up, we will be hearing from Sask Politiker on the same topic. Mr. Sask, you may begin.
Perfect, thank you. So I do agree with some of the candidates that it is provincial jurisdiction for healthcare, but there is a lot of things that the federal government can do. Our approach with the CCF is both to support provinces and do everything we can at the federal level to fix the healthcare crisis in this country. So one of our important keynote policies that we do have is inflation and population growth transfers to provinces. So provinces should never lose money in real terms from the federal government for healthcare, for education, and for social services. So we'll be indexing that to inflation and population growth so our healthcare system is constantly supported no matter what. We also have increased mental health and addictions funding at the federal level. That's our plan in the previous government. That will be my plan in this government and with the CCF team. That is our plan. We've also planned to eliminate poverty in this country. Poverty kills every single year. There's people that can't afford to eat, that can't afford a home. We will ensure that poverty drops insanely this year, and it will be eliminated within a couple of years. But we know for sure that we can cut it in half in a single year at no added fiscal cost. The most important thing we can do is a 4-day work week. Our 4-day work week experiment, we will consult with provinces and we will make it happen at the federal level for sure, but we will also work with our provinces. There is no province that will turn down the health benefits and the economic benefits and the revenue that they will gain from a 4-day work week program. Mental health will improve, burnout will fall by 80%. So we will for sure save lives. We will end suicide in this country. And that's a blanket policy across the board: 4-day work week, GBI, inflation and population growth, and mental health and addictions funding. That is the CCF plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we will finish up with the leader of the People's Party of Canada delivering his statement on health. A game of power. You may begin when you are ready.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Actually, I've heard some good ideas on this stage. I believe that the social liberal leader brought up exercise. And while, yes, that is a good way of making sure that people don't need healthcare as much, I don't think that anyone should be disregarding that as a statement. And then the Citizens Party brought up that the People's Party don't even know what healthcare is. Well, I believe that they may have wanted to actually take a look at our platform because we have some good points on healthcare itself. We mention that we want to prioritize skilled healthcare immigrants. Do you know how difficult it is to keep your certifications when you're moving to Canada? Many people who are qualified for certain jobs are just unable to do them because of how difficult it is to get reaccredited. This means that there's a lot of people that would be able to do positions but are unable to do so. I know back when I worked at a law firm, there were many clerks who were lawyers in other countries. These are skills that are not being used by the Canadian people, and ones which can be used to address our shortages in staff. I also know that it is a running joke sometimes that I bring it up, but Brampton does need a second hospital, and I am sure that there will be no one to disagree with that. And my last point would be, what is that baloney that I'm hearing from the CCF? A 4-day work week? Canada is not an experiment. We don't need experimental policies here. And that's all I have to say on that topic. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, that was nice. Thank you, everyone. Now we will begin with the main format of this debate, which is leader asked questions. Every leader will have a chance to ask another leader a question, which has been randomly determined, and the schedule has been sent to the leaders. Therefore, we will begin by asking Lady Aya to ask her question to Infamous Hole. You two can begin when you are ready. You will have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm ready. I hope my
Okay,
microphone's
yeah, I'm
working.
sorry.
I hope
Yes,
my
I am.
microphone's working this time.
Yes, you may begin when you are.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of.
May I remind readers that this is on national television?
I can reply to your comments about my holiday if you want.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Well, the fact of the matter is that the holiday's not intended to get everybody out and moving, but the whole point is that we need to put it in a highly visible, not a highly visible televised event so that people remember the importance of it. Now, I think it's a
What?
shame that your party's policies is just to throw it at the provincial government without offering anything constructive. And my problem with that is that, as I said about the foreign credentials, people are already having a hard time getting a job or getting a callback because they don't have an Anglo name. Don't you think that the CAQ's policies of hiring based on French is only going to make the problem worse? If immigrants have to worry about dual languages, if companies are worried that they're going to get fined because they don't have enough French speakers, don't you think it's going to make the whole healthcare system worse?
Well, sorry for the social liberal leader, but I do not. Well, I do not believe that Quebec should be within Canada. But Canada, as it currently exists, is a federal government, and I do believe that there are certain things that should belong to the provinces. I don't think that this is a ludicrous idea. I also think that you saying having this televised thing is going to help people. I mean, for one, people are very aware of exercise, and there's already a lot of messages for people to go and exercise and go outdoors. And second of all, even if we did have some televised event, which I am very questioning what would that even sort of be, but even if so, I mean, it still runs the thing of like, why would people watch something like watch this televised event to see some people exercise? That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, it's because if you have people talking about how tomorrow's a day for national exercise, we can tie that to running for charity, as the PPC's done in the past. We can tie that to seeing the world leaders, the national leaders going outside and walking. It's a very powerful signal because people do look up to some politicians, including the prime minister, as role models. And if we can get them outside with the cameras on, it's going to help. And frankly, I think it's a really big shame that you're more preoccupied with referendums than actually making healthcare better for anybody. But I guess that's just what the blog's
I
message is.
never mentioned any referendum.
Well, you didn't
Referendum.
mention anything about healthcare either. You just said we're going to leave it to the CAQ.
I mean, I don't think saying a provincial matter should stay within the provinces as saying nothing. I think it's a rebuttal
Okay.
against overreaching
Okay.
parties.
Okay, and that is time. Thank you both very much. Now, Infamous Hole, you may ask your question to Jack. You may begin when you are ready.
Well, I want to ask the leader of the citizens if he could stop mudslinging for a second and tell me, why does he think that telling provinces they're not going to get any health transfers if there's private clinics is helpful?
My friend in the establishment level party here only does two things. He lies and he goes on national television to walk around to encourage everyone who currently has their child dying due to hallway health care, but they get to see their prime minister walking around outside. And maybe that'll help the broken arm that is bleeding out on the floor due to health care in the hallway. My friend over in the Social Liberal Party is deeply unserious and should not be trusted with healthcare at all. A real prime minister knows that healthcare is funding. You need to pay for it and you need to support it. Supporting healthcare isn't creating holidays where people dying because their teeth are rotting out get to see their prime minister walk down Rideau Street. That is not real.
Well, it's really ironic because you used to live in Rideau Hall when you were the governor general, but your platform itself says we're going to cut health transfers if
And
the
what's your
provinces
platform
don't use
say?
it.
All we hear
I
about
told you,
your
I'm going
platform
to.
is
I've
that
said
your
that
plan is to create
I'm going to read.
holidays, is to get kids off their devices. This party across from me is a deeply unserious party. Canadians can see that plainly. There is only one party
here.
on this stage that stands for citizens, and it's the one with the name in it.
The important part is making sure that people have healthy lifestyles so that they don't have to visit a doctor. I don't think there's anything controversial
No,
about
sir.
that.
The important part is that we fund healthcare.
I've
People
said
already
the
know that
only
they need to go
person
for a walk,
who
but
wants
your
to cut
policy is just
transfers,
to put a
you
couple
want to
television
cut the
cameras
transfers.
in front of
No,
a park and have a bunch
that's
of
not true.
bureaucrats walk down it.
That's not true. And I think that you engaged in many of those engagements when you were Governor General, but that's
That
not
is
the
true. I
important
did
part.
walk when
The
I was Governor
important fact
General,
is
but
that
I also signed bills when I was Governor General that actually funded healthcare. How many
you
bills
didn't
have
write those
you
bills.
signed that funded healthcare?
You
That's
just
right.
put
You have never signed a bill that funded healthcare.
yeah,
Only a
because
citizens party will make sure that every hospital in the world, every hospital in Canada has enough money so that your kid doesn't go blind because there's not enough funding.
Well, I think
Here, here.
giving my signature to a paper doesn't actually help anybody. Neither does this constant shouting. The difference between people like you and Sask Politica is that you guys make a commitment and then try to strong arm it down the mouths of all the elected
When we
provincial
make a
governments
commitment,
and
we
then take
follow
away the
through.
wallet.
In my
I want
party,
to have a
we
discussion.
commit to no
I've
private
said about
hospitals.
health.
The
I said I
government
want to
will make
expand health
sure
transplants.
that your
That's
teeth
not
don't
true.
rot out. We will make sure that when you break an arm, it'll get taken care of responsibly. The elitist establishment liberals, when your arm is broken, you know what they want to do? What they want to do is recommend things to the provinces. Our party will
Alright, that is
actually
time.
make sure it gets done.
That is time.
Thank you for the
That
time.
is time. And may I remind? Okay. Now let's just keep going. Okay, Jack, you may now ask the question to Mr. Sask Politica. Your time
Thank
begins
you.
whenever you are ready.
I'd like to thank the time for the moderator for this great time. Mr. Sask Politiker, I distinctly remember staring you in the eye in the House of Commons when you introduced a budget that left $2.3 billion lying on the floor. I want you to tell Canadians right now, with a straight face, why you didn't commit that money to making sure their teeth don't rot out.
Well, I would like to point out that I didn't leave $2.3 billion on the floor. I left $23 billion on the floor, and I didn't leave it in the floor. I put it in the sovereign
$23
wealth fund.
billion. You hear to hear
I put it.
first, folks.
No, okay. Listen to this. Do you want healthcare funding to be sustainable and to grow exponentially, or do you want to waste it this year and never have it again? Do you want one-time solutions or long-term solutions? If you
Does
want a
this
long-term
prime minister,
solution,
does this man
you need to
think
invest
that
in a sovereign
healthcare
wealth fund.
spending is
You have to realize
wasting money?
that our debt to GDP ratio will only fall if we are investing in the highest returning investment that we can when we have a surplus. We need to fix our finances, and the only way to do it is with the sovereign wealth fund, and that will guarantee exponentially growing funding for all of our government and especially for healthcare every single year into the future. Exponential. Our returns every single year are 10%, and we will be withdrawing 4% of the fund every single year. We will be reducing our debt to GDP ratio, so we have the capacity to borrow more if we go into recessions. So we will never cut funding to healthcare ever again.
Canadians in your system are only worth 4%. Is that what I'm hearing? Under the Citizens Party,
That
they're
is
worth
not what you're hearing.
100%.
That is not
Under a
what you're hearing.
Citizens Party, we
You
will
are
fund
hearing
100% of the healthcare. Under a
you are
Citizens
hearing that
government,
you
we
don't know
will
how to
make
invest
sure
money.
that $23 billion never gets left on the floor. That $23 billion makes sure that your kid can see the whiteboard when he's sitting in the back of class. To make sure that your kid's breath doesn't smell like crap because he can't afford a good dentist. This
You have
CCF party
absolutely
will
no idea.
continue.
Absolutely no idea how public finance works. This is why we don't need you people in government running the government. That's why our government is going to be formed, and I will be finance minister once again because we were delivering for Canadians. Now I'm going to address your remarks on 4%. That is a 4% withdrawal from a fund because our returns fluctuate year over year. That is a sustainable amount to withdraw. That is as much as we can withdraw with the fund growing exponentially. We want money to grow as much as possible for Canadians, and that is the maximum return that we can give Canadians out of this fund. Now,
It's the
if the global economy
maximum
radically
return.
changed,
Are you hearing what
it
this
is
man is saying? He wants to give you the bare minimum. He wants you to
it
have
is absolutely
what
not. Let's listen
he
up here. It's
thinks
$100
you
billion
deserve. But it's
in a
the
short
Citizen
amount of
Party
years.
that knows that you deserve
These people don't
nothing
even have a
less
costed
than a
budget. These
complete
people don't even
funding of
have
the
a plan
healthcare
to invest.
system. Like the rest of the parties beside me, they don't believe in universal healthcare. They believe in some
That is time.
fictionalized version of it. Only the
That is
citizens
time.
believe in
That
true
is time.
universal.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Sask Politica, you may ask the question to Mr. The Game of Power. Your time begins whenever you are ready. Thank you.
So I would just like to point out that you called our plan for a 4-day work week experimental. Now let's talk about experimental. Any new policy, we need new policies. Do you want the status quo? No, we don't. So we have to be trying new things. And this isn't a new thing.
Thank you for
Every
your
other country in the
question,
world has been
kind sir.
pursuing this
Please
policy, and they
actually
have.
ask it.
Yes,
I'm
please
getting.
ask an actual question.
Okay, well, I'll ask a question right now. Do you even know about any of the studies on a 4-day work week and their impacts on healthcare? Can you cite any of them? Because I can.
Oh, can you? Can you? Why don't you start then? Name 50 studies.
Name 50. I'm not going to waste Canadians'
Please
time
keep
naming
it on
50 studies, but
people.
I will give you
Please
one
keep,
right now.
But
please keep it
Scientific
on
let me
subject of
come
health.
back to something. Did I just hear you say you people? Our best friend Don Cherry was taken down by those words, so I would be scared to hear them from someone running for parliament.
Canadians get the context of you trying to take away and kill them with healthcare that sucks and that continues to worsen under the
our
status quo
healthcare
policies that you're
sucks.
pursuing. I think they get the difference between
our
that and
lack
racism.
of
I'm pretty sure the
healthcare
Canadians are a lot
workers, and
smarter than
you're
the
coming
PPC
here and
tells them
saying
that
it
they are.
sucks? Are you saying we don't need more employees in our hospitals?
We do. I'm saying the system right now is not working, and we know it isn't because people are dying right now. We need to invest more in our healthcare system. We have a plan to do so. The PPC wants status quo.
Citizen over there, and I thought it was quite funny. I mean, I was definitely talking about this with my best friend, former Alberta Premier. I won't say his name, but best friends with him.
Question in there?
Has your time elapsed?
I don't believe it has.
No, I'm asking, do you have something else to
I
add?
don't
My
have
apologies.
anything else to add.
Okay, then we will consider this over. Thank you both. Now, Mr. Game of Power, you may ask a question to Miss Aya. The time begins whenever you are ready.
Actually, my question has to do with Bill 15, which the CAC government recently put into place. It more so lies in the fact of, do you support that bill? To add extra context, it's a healthcare reform.
Aya, are you there?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
have no idea about this bill, so look at the basics here. Let's see. Well, I mean, I would definitely just say, as I've mentioned before, that I do believe that healthcare is a provincial issue, and there are times where me and my party members might disagree with a certain decision that the government of Quebec makes, but we still stand behind their ability to make that decision. So I mean, I would just say that even if sometimes the Quebec government could be wrong, I still will stand behind Quebec and stand against any attempt to encroach upon provincial matters.
That's a fair answer. Although my sort of thought process was more towards how it creates like a new health Quebec, which sort of centralizes authority on the healthcare system within the government of Quebec.
I mean, I would just sort of say that although there are certain levels which I may agree with the People's Party, I mean, I'm not necessarily against centralization. I'm certainly not as far left as the Social Liberal Party or Citizens or the Pirate Party, but certainly I'm not necessarily against certain types of centralization if it actually is for the good of Quebecois.
Okay, I accept that. I can see that you're making attempts to like you are the bloc. It is your prerogative to look for the best in Quebec. But I appreciate your answers. Thank you. If you want to move on, we can.
Are we prepared to move on? Thank you very much
Yeah,
to the
sure.
both of you. Let's do a social media check-in. It appears there are a lot of a lot of pro citizens takes. One F Nutman 69. He appears to be one of those people too much on devices that the citizens were talking about. Okay. Next up, we will be discussing foreign policy. To begin our statements, let's hear from Sash Politicking. The 2 minutes on foreign policy begin now.
We didn't really have much time to go over fiscal policy or foreign policy when we were government, but we do have a lot of ideas on it. The CCF definitely has a strong plan on this. We do support the JAMS Act, which never got to be passed. We do support Arctic bases. Our Arctic sovereignty is so critical right now, especially with climate change. We've seen the Russians intruding there. We've seen the Chinese. We have never seen a land war like this in Europe since the Second World War. This is a time of global tensions, and we need to be stepping up. Our NATO funding is way behind, but I don't think that we need to just focus on the monetary amount, the percentage of GDP. That is important, but we need to be focused on fixing our procurement process. We need to focus on delivering better for our military and the equipment we need, not just the prices of things. We need to fix our procurement process so we can have things now rather than later, which is what we have right now, which is costing us money and costing us purchasing power in the military. We need a fleet of icebreakers. That is so critical. Russia has nuclear icebreakers. We cannot defend our Arctic right now. We have people in the Arctic using Ross rifles right now from the Second World War, and that is our defense in the Arctic. We need bases up there, we need icebreakers, and we need to build them quickly and cost effectively, not at Irving shipyards, which has hiked up our costs. That's why we need to look with our allies and to build ships where they make sense to be built. Thank you.
Is that all? Okay, thank you
Oh, yeah.
very much. So, let me just. Okay, next up, we will be hearing from the foreign policy from the leader of the People's Party of Canada, a game of power. Your time begins when you are ready.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Wow, another party talking about how they want to increase the quality of our military, add a bunch of stuff, while also reducing the costs. Oh my gosh, math doesn't math at all. We actually are planning on going to 2% of the GDP as per the commitments that have been made by prior governments. We should keep our promises, and that's something we stand up to. Now, this might not be something that the People's Party was a part of, but as I was the prime minister back then, I will give much credit to some of the criticisms that were levied at my government back then by Freedom Canada 2025, which pushed us to do things like help free the hostages during the Israel-Gaza conflict and helping Canadians get home. Those were things that we have already done, and we have the experience to be able to continue doing them. Now, let me talk a bit more about some of the other foreign policy points that we plan on bringing out. Now, we know there's a war happening in Ukraine, but not many people are fully up to date with what's going on. And I believe that the Canadian people should have more information about that. Now, it appears I'm already beginning to get into the process of being cut off. So let me just cut myself off here before I start going on too much of a rant and give the microphone back to the moderator. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. That was very polite of you. Thank you very much. Okay. Next up, we will be hearing from Infamous Hall. You have 2 minutes to discuss foreign policy. Your time begins when you are ready.
Thank you very much. Good foreign policy has been at the top of my list of priorities since the start of the campaign, and that's something that I'm going to deliver to you tonight. As I've said throughout, it's time for us to get Energy East built. We need to get our natural resources out to foreign markets because the global demand for fossil fuel heating cannot be overstated. We've paid more than 10 billion in terms of foreign oil imports every year, and if we can phase some of that out, we can free up some of the budget. I'm not it might be a bit too late in the developing world, but natural gas is a fantastic alternative for all the countries that are still reliant on coal-fired electric generation. So, if we can get our resources out to market, we can help them reduce their emissions and make revenue in the process. As I've said before, Canada needs better trade relations with new markets. I want to commit to free trade by ending dues and tariffs on industries like clothing, and I'm going to dismantle supply management because it's overcosting, it's causing dairy prices to rise while making trade deals hard with the United States. I continue to support aid to Ukraine, and I'm glad to give you an update on what's going on. What's going on is that even though they've been pushed back a bit, they're still doing a fantastic job at sinking the Russian Navy and shooting down Russian planes, and we need to give them the weapons they need to make victory a reality. I think that in the Gaza Strip, it's time for a humanitarian pause, and I believe it's important for us to evacuate the people there and provide a concrete plan to bringing democracy back into all of Palestine. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Now we will be hearing from, let's see, we will be hearing from Jack from the Citizens Party. You will have 2 minutes to present a statement on foreign policy. The time begins when you are ready.
You see, the Citizens Party believes in a robust civil rights framework for its foreign policy. It's very crucial that Canada leads the world using human rights as a guiding principle that we apply across all of our foreign policy. The Citizens Party believes that the war in Ukraine is a war of democracy and one that Canada must holistically support Ukraine in its fight for. Slava Ukraini, we stand with the brave soldiers in the Ukrainian military as they fight against the Russian invasion. When it comes to the conflict in Palestine, obviously a two-state solution is the obvious example that the Citizens Party believes, with an emphasis on human rights and democracy. The Citizens Party believes that the only route to peace in that area is two states coexisting with each other. The Citizens Party is a premier party when it comes to using moral judgment, when it comes to the application of human rights globally. It's very crucial that Canada stands up for its values and stands beside our NATO allies in all circumstances, as well as standing up for international, bilateral, and multilateralism. Thank you very much for the time.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. I was just about to give you a warning about time, but that's excellent. Okay. We will complete foreign policy statements with Lady Aya. Aya, your time begins when you are ready.
I agree with many at the table here as far as standing with Ukraine against the invading Russian army, but I also think that something is missing with these other foreign policy um, statements from the other parties that Bloc Québécois mentioned within our platform. Um, we must not only protect human rights as far as the invading Russian army or concerns right now regarding Israel and Palestine. We must also do it with governments around the world, even ones we might consider as allies. In my platform, I point out what's currently going on with the National Act New Zealand and New Zealand First government over in New Zealand and the acts they're taking right now to undermine the foundational documents of their country, especially with Te Tiriti. I also must think that even if they're allies, we must call out any such attempts to undermine human rights and protections for nations. I don't think that we can safely. I don't think that we can safely ignore them just because that Ukraine is under danger, and we should be helping them. but we must not also forget these other cases of human rights, if not abuses, then human right backsliding in other countries.
Okay. Do you have anything else to add?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much to the leader of the Bloc Québécois. Now we will begin with questions, same rules as last time. And look at that. The first question asked will be by the leader of the Bloc Québécois to Jack, the leader of the Citizens Party. The time begins whenever you are ready. Yeah.
Hit me.
Okay, cool. We're just waiting for Ironman. I will set the
Can I
timer.
just can I use this as time to speak?
Uh,
Sorry, I didn't realize
there
I
we
was
go.
muted there. Yeah, I mean, so the citizens leader, you did talk a great deal about human rights and ensuring that Canada is a beacon of human rights. What you also, as Bloc Québécois, intends to do to pressure the governments like that of New Zealand that seem to be backsliding on certain human rights, especially towards their indigenous populations?
The Citizens Party believes that it's crucial for all of our allies to exhibit the same dedication to human rights that Canada has shown over the course of its long history. And of course, we will be appropriately applying pressure to other countries that we believe don't meet those human right dedications.
So, what would you say here now that you would pressure New Zealand if elected, or if part of government for this next term?
The Citizen Party believes that human rights is a crucial part of our human rights and foreign policy approach. And of course, we would pressure any government that we believe is not applying their human rights in a way that
That's not answering the question.
Canada doesn't see as fit. Well, of course, as you know, Canada, we have a lot of human rights that we believe in. It's really important to the Citizens Party that we apply those values consistently.
Again, that is still not answering the question.
Uh,
You
of,
uh, you
of
you you
course.
hammered the social liberal leader earlier about not answering the question and just avoiding it to talk about other things. Why are you doing it now?
Of course, of course. I understand your frustration here, and that's why it's my belief that Canada's foreign policy needs to be applied in a consistent manner. Our friends
Still not
abroad,
answering the question.
they expect us to be predictable as trade partners, as foreign partners, and of course the citizens' government would apply a soft touch with an emphasis on human rights.
Well, sure, you can talk about soft touches, but you're still not answering the question. Would Citizens Party, if part of government, pressure uh, the government of New Zealand to not backslide on human rights, especially when talking about Te Tiriti?
Of course, the Citizens Party believes that we should be applying pressure to any government that we believe is not
I'm not
applying
talking
human
about any
rights in
government.
a
I'm talking
foreign.
about this
Okay.
particular government.
Time
Yes or
time
no?
is complete. And may I remind all of our fine leaders that there is coffee in the green room backstage if they choose to partake.
Awesome.
Okay, next
Green room is
question.
very nice. Went to the
Infamous
bathroom
hole.
earlier.
Infamous hole. You will be able to ask a question to Mr. Sask Politiker. Your time begins when you ask the question.
Well, yeah, my question is that if he knows his policy on Ukraine, because I didn't see a single mention of that on the CCF policy. What does your party have to offer to Ukraine and Israel?
So our Canadian forces are in a crisis of unserviceability. They're in a procurement crisis. We can procure equipment for Ukraine, but not as fast as we'd like to. And it's the same deal for our entire military. It's a system that plagues our entire system. We order equipment and we wait years to get it, and our purchasing power to buy that equipment at the end when we get it falls. So we can buy less when we actually have to get it. So we need to fix that so then we can support ourselves and Ukraine. So our government will set aside funds and will continue funding Ukraine and supporting Ukraine and procuring weapons for Ukraine. But we want that weapons to be procured faster than they are being procured now for our own military and for Ukraine. And that is our policy.
Well, I think that's a pretty good answer. I'm glad that most of us on stage share the commitment in funding Ukraine. But the reality is that even though you stand against it, Energy East is one of the best ways we can help Ukraine. And I don't understand why you're consistently against it.
What do you mean by I'm against energy? I would like you to cite an instance of me being against energy.
Energy East.
I am not against Energy East. I stated clearly in that press release the other day and in a speech that I support Energy East if the company can make a business case for it. And our government will get out of the way so that they can make a business case without government regulations getting in the way like they did before. But the industry does not have a business case. That is my opinion. If they can present one, I will approve it. If they want to build that pipeline, if they still do, we will not oppose it. And I said that clearly already. But I do not think that they want to build it because we have Trans Mountain coming online, and that pipeline outcompetes anything else that we will ever potentially build because it has net back improvement on every barrel sold, an increased profit of $5 a barrel. Who would sell? Who would build another pipeline if that is the profit that you can get from that pipeline?
If I may. Well, I have to say, there you go again. The issue is that you're still stuck within the constraints of your balance sheets, but I'm thinking about this on a global level. If oil and gas was as unprofitable as you keep saying, then Russia
It's not
wouldn't be
unprofitable.
using.
I'm talking about increased profits.
Well, if you'd say if it's so unprofitable, Russia wouldn't be using its exports as a main funding source for its war chest. The fact is, it's waiting for Europe to blink by cutting off the taps so that it can wait for populists to take over the governments and end aid. If we want to prevent that, we need to get our natural resources out to export, and Energy East is exactly the way to do so.
Well, if you think that it has a business case, then why isn't the company coming forward to build it? We have to cut regulations so that they can build it, and if they want to build it, we will let them build it. We will not stand in the way of Energy East if there is a business case.
Excuse me? Thank you.
Yeah.
Your time is now up. Now, the next classifier will be the leader of the People's Party of Canada, a game of power, asking a question to Infamous Hole.
Huh. This is giving me a bit of deja vu, because I believe that we had a crossfire during the last debate, and I guess I think I'll bring up the same question I had back then of what are your thoughts on the United Nations and about whether or not you think the funding should be decreased again?
My policies
Very good question.
remain consistent. I think that we need to cut funding to UN and transfer it to direct foreign aid so that countries know who's actually helping them. Right now, Canada has very few allies, especially in the developing world, and we should help them with additional funding. Now, I have a question for you, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Well, one of your current candidates, Freedom Canada 2025, back when I was in the House, he accused members of your government and myself of being supportive of terrorism on the House floor because of our stance on Israel-Gaza. So I want to ask you if you're going to disavow those comments, or is that the official viewpoint of the PPC?
I think that Mr. Freedom Canada has had some growth in the past few months. I believe that he has since changed some of his statements. As you've noticed, he has become a much different person than he was in the past. But
well, do you disavow then?
Do
you disavow
honestly, no, I will never disavow them. I will have a discussion with Freedom Canada, but I will not disavow statements made by my candidates.
Well, but he called your government supportive of terrorism. Is this the kind of? Are you just throwing your former MPs under the bus?
I'm throwing myself under the bus to protect Freedom Canada.
What? So his
Let him
candidacy
throw
is
me
more
under the bus.
important.
Let him throw me under the
Well,
bus.
but well, it suggests that his candidacy is more important than
No,
than
I'm saying
proper
that
freedom.
throw
Okay,
me under the bus
okay,
then. You were part of
okay,
my
right,
government.
right, and that's why I'm bringing it up. I think that the public deserves to know if your party still stands for that. If it doesn't, that's fantastic. But I don't quite understand the appeal of your platform calling for a ceasefire in Ukraine. The only thing a ceasefire is going to do is give Russia time to recuperate.
Will it give
I
Russia
think
time
that
to recuperate? What
yes,
didn't
yes, that's why
during World War One? Wasn't
this is
Germany starved of resources, and then that was ultimately what made them surrender? During the Napoleonic War, wasn't France
they're not starved
starved
of
of
resources.
resources and then forced to
A
surrender?
ceasefire is not going to
A
cut off the gas
ceasefire
and
will
oil.
mean that Russia's
Russia gets
situation
to
is going to
export.
get worse. I
It's
Hey,
gonna
apologize,
slowly
sir,
get
if
excellent.
you
export.
do not
Excuse me.
have access to this
Excuse me.
classified information.
Excuse me. Thank you very much. Okay. Next, sorry for having to butt in the time constraints and whatnot. Okay. Next up, we will be hearing from Sask Politico, asking a question to Lady Aya. The time will begin when he asks a question. You have 3 minutes. May go ahead.
Perfect. So, like, Canada does have federal issues with foreign policy. So, we do have our procurement crisis and our Arctic sovereignty crisis. But I want to ask a constructive question to Quebec in case that we both are elected and our parties are elected. I would like to ask, what would Quebecers like to see on a Quebec trade program and foreign relations from a provincial level? Would Quebec like to see federal offices or provincial offices that can engage in trade? What would Quebec like to see?
I mean, one of the things that this is, I guess, somewhat related to a policy we had. One of the things that Bloc Quebecois suggests is that any like international matter, this is especially for like treaties, but can also apply to trade deals that involves something that's within Quebec's um, purview, is something that Quebec should have a say on, if not, let's say like a referendum on. So I definitely think like if it's a trade deal that involves Quebec and a lot of our natural resources, I definitely think that Quebec would like to see our input uh, viewed by the federal government, and for us to have a say in how much in the way that it affects us.
Yeah, so this is something that I proposed to the government of Quebec when we were doing negotiations on constitutional reform. We did want to have Quebec have clear roles set out for trade relations. And one of our goals was to have Quebec become a link between Canada and Europe. If Quebec was to join the European Union, that would be something that we could support, policies like that, or even join some kind of trade agreement with French countries. And Quebec would then funnel those free trade agreements into Quebec and through the rest of Canada. Feel like that would be a very good policy for the rest of us. And I do support policies as well, like CMHoC for the rest of Canada. But this would be a very good trade bloc, and Quebec presents a very strong economic opportunity for all of Canada. And this is a strong opportunity for Quebec itself, both in its relationship with Canada and own economic prosperity within the province.
Yeah, I mean, I think this sort of gets back to one of the strengths of Bloc Québécois. Some might see my party as being too compromising, let's say, but I definitely think that Bloc Québécois, at the end of the day, wants what's best for Quebec. And if I need to work with the People's Party one day, and then the Social Liberal, or the CCF the next day, I will do that as long as it's in the best interest of Quebec.
And we absolutely, as the CCF, do support Quebec in the same way. So thank you for that.
Okay, excellent. I'm glad that this ended on a note of agreement. Next up, we will be hearing a question from Jack, the leader of the People's Party of Canada, A Game of Power. Your time begins when you ask the question.
Wait,
Thank
Jack,
you
before you
very
ask the
much.
question, did you just hear Quebec joining the EU like I did?
Yeah, what the hell
What
is
was
that?
that?
Quebec
On
joined.
topic.
Let us
please.
please, in agreement, talk about how ridiculous that concept was. Quebec joining the European
Oh,
Union?
first off,
These candidates are unserious.
First off,
Anyways,
doesn't
back to
Quebec-
Okay,
back
I would like to say I never
back
agreed
to,
about that.
What
I
is-
just brought up other
Everyone.
stuff.
Everyone, back on topic. Jack, ask the question.
although
This is a game
the
of power.
EU, Quebec joining the EU is on the topic of foreign affairs. We are just finding it odd.
We'll format it in the form of a question, please.
Jack, what are your
I
thoughts on
do-
the previous debate, Crossfire?
You see, I'd like to engage in a different line of questioning here, if I may. Mr. Gamer Power, as a political candidate, how do you propose navigating the intricate balance between upholding NATO's complicated collective defense obligations, particularly in the face of evolving security threats such as cyber warfare and disinformation campaigns, while also addressing concerns about the organization's enlargement and potential implications for global stability and diplomatic relations, particularly in regions like Eastern Europe and the South.
Are you sure you're finished your question, or is that going to be for? Or are you gonna still be continuing to ask for another minute and a half? So,
No, please.
Thank you for your question, kind sir. I believe we have some of what you just asked in our platform, and so I'll direct you to some of those issues. Now, I believe you had mentioned our NATO obligations, so a check mark for us on that. I believe our platform says we will increase the NATO spending to the 2% target. Oh, yes, it does, and it's something that I've already mentioned before. We also have talked about increasing our spending with regards to the military. But
So you're telling me
yes,
that
go
your
ahead.
party's plan is to spend money on the military instead of spending money on Canadians who need their health, who need their rights, who need their housing? Is this seriously the People's Party, political platform to waste your money?
Yes.
Okay,
Our defense
excellent.
obligations are a waste,
and-
Mr.
And you heard it here
And on
first, folks.
excuse me.
Yes, his plan is to waste your.
Okay, excellent. Now, let us continue. And I would like to apologize for having to cut off the microphone, but we are running behind a little bit. We need to keep it on pace, TV schedules and the like. I suppose we will be going right back to Mr. Jack for his statement on fiscal policy. You may now go ahead. I will uncut off your mic. You have 2 minutes.
This
go
is
ahead.
what you get when you speak the truth about how Canada should be run. But I will digress. Every member up here today has served already in this here House of Commons, and every single one has never raised the budget to fund the things you need. There is only one party here that will fund citizens' needs. And that, my friends, is the Citizens Party. Look at me through this camera and know that when I tell you that my party is the only one that will give you true universal health care, and I will do it with the utmost strength. I will make sure that this is a utmost priority. Every member here with me today, the People's Party, the establishment liberals, the faux conservatives, all of them want to do the same thing. The same tried and tested and failed neoliberal platform. they all have the same idea, to fund their rich buddies rather than fund you. A citizen's government has one priority, a single priority: keep you healthy, keep you held, keep you fed. All of these parties want you to starve to death. A citizen's party wants you to thrive. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I have a bug in my throat. Next up, we will be hearing from Sas Politica for 2 minutes for his fiscal policy statement. Your time begins when you begin speaking, sir.
So our government in the last term, we cut $11.2 billion of taxes. Now I know our budget didn't pass, but that act passed, Mr. Well, I can't say Mr. Speaker right now. You were a very good speaker, I will note that. But our plan now is to continue our tax cuts. We're going to cut the second bracket of income taxes by 5.5% to 15%. We will also cut the corporate taxes to increase investment in Canada. Now, this approach was recommended by the C.D. Howe Institute in a report that was set out for our budget this year. We didn't have time to consider it in the budget that I prepared, but I have now costed that out and put that in our platform. We've also included, as our QB partners have mentioned, universal healthcare, and how we're going to achieve that is we're going to introduce universal pharmacare. That's going to cost about $11 billion. We've costed that into our budget. And let's talk about our plan for a sovereign wealth fund. Our $10 billion that we're going to invest in that, that's $100 million, not even $100 million, $10 billion is going to turn into $1 billion a year in interest earned for Canadians off of that surplus. That, after 10 years, pays itself off. It's a great investment for Canadians. It's going to fund healthcare, it's going to fund taxes and cut the taxes and balance the budget, fix the budget. We've already cut subsidies so our economy can grow. That is our plan for a balanced and innovative Canada.
Okay, is that all? Is that all, sir?
Yes, it is.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, and thank you for the kind compliment. Next up, we will be hearing from the People's Party leader, again with Howard, his fiscal policy statement. You have 2 minutes. Your time begins now.
Thank you, sir. If only it were that easy. If everything just happened the way the CCF candidate said, then wouldn't a different government have already implemented these changes? But no, they haven't, because he's throwing around fake numbers and hoping that he can cover the eyes of the Canadian people. Now, what am I going to do about it? I'm going to start talking a bit about the People's Party platform. And I'm going to bring out our economic and infrastructure policy, about how we're going to lower our corporate tax rates from 15 to 10%, about how that's going to create more jobs in Canada and in part allow us to eliminate corporate subsidies as well. Like, these are things that we've seen that work from experience instead of from fantasy. I'll give
From my experience.
You can have your crossfire with me later, sir. I'll just cut myself off there, and then we can move on to the next person. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Excellent, and thank you for your kind understanding of time. Next up, we will hear from Lady Aya. Your time begins when you begin speaking for the 2-minute fiscal policy statement.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that Bloc Québécois' fiscal and economic policy reflects a lot of stuff I've already said in this debate. We do not believe in excess spending like you would likely see with the pirates or citizens there. But we also don't believe in austerity for austerity's sake. We did support the GST cut during last Parliament. Because it did help. It would help ordinary Quebecois, but in matters of fiscal policy, I do believe that we must seek the common sense ground, and very often people can be lost in their ideological bubbles on this. And I believe that we need to be. I mean, this is an area where I believe we need to be threading the needle here and ensure that we have a secure enough safety net for Quebecois while also not seeking to bankrupt ourselves.
Okay, is that all?
Yeah, basically.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Last, we will hear the fiscal policy statement of the leader of the Social Liberal Alliance, Mr. Infamous Hole. You have 2 minutes. Your time begins when
Thank
you
you.
begin.
Well, before we begin, I want to say I've heard an awful lot of nonsense throughout this campaign, but there's one that I have to inform the Canadian people. Sask Politiker has talked endlessly about his fiscal agendas, but his last budget with a so-called surplus was entirely financed by a 4-day work experiment that never passed. The budget is something you'd see in a mirror. It's not based in reality, and I hope that Canadians will disavow it when the time comes. Now, my platform has offered many spending initiatives. Our prosperity program targets the vulnerable to give them a little push towards education and employment, because when you give people universal basic income, all you're doing is giving them an incentive to not find work. You need to condition it on finding work if you want them to be productive for the long term. My plans for prison reform will make our society safer down the line and result in less healthcare and prison budget, smaller healthcare and prison budgets. Our plans to build Energy East and increase exports will also generate us a lot of revenues. But I want to disavow the notion that corporate subsidies are a dirty word. They're not. We need to give companies the incentives to move from fossil fuels to renewables if we want them to actually do so. They're not going to build themselves. To balance the budget, I will implement a wealth tax, increase corporate taxes on the largest companies, harmonize taxes across provinces so that we're not competing with one another for jobs and companies. And I want to negotiate a minimum corporate tax across allied countries to prevent capital flight. I'm thinking in the long term, not just the short term, and I hope you vote for these policies on election day. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Now, we will begin our final round of classifiers by allowing Mr. Jack to ask a question to Mr. Sask Politiker. Your time begins when you ask the question.
Ask me a good one.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to interrogate the last person with his hands on the financial wheel. Now, Canadians have heard here with their own ears that this government cut $11 billion, that this government left $23 billion on the floor. Now, I didn't pass high school math, but even I know that that is a grand total of $34 billion that Canadians don't have where they need it most. How do you sleep at night?
I would just like to point out that we spend in all kinds of areas in the budget that invest in Canadians through things like healthcare, through things like our public services and our military. And these are things that we need to fund and Canadians need. These are services that Canadians rely on. And those are investments that don't just go straight to Canadian pockets.
And
That's
they
the same
rely on
thing
them, and
with
yet
the
you
Sovereign Wealth
chose
Fund. The
to
Sovereign
not
Wealth Fund
give
is a
them
revenue initiative.
$34 billion.
And
They
I'm
rely on
going to
them.
point out, I will
Just
point
like
out
every
that
candidate on this
that we made
stage,
no
the only
cuts.
word that gets spoken out of your mouth is cut, cut, cut. But where is the invest that I hear? None of these candidates, including you, wants to invest in Canadians. All they
Let's take a
want to
look
do
at the
is
budget.
cut for their wealthy friends.
Let's take a look at the budget, because look at our flows in our revenue and look at our flows in expenses. We have revenue flows that are up, but we only cut subsidies to wealthy corporations and to wealthy Canadians. We are not going to give money to people to do things that they were already going to do and don't need.
Flows
We are giving
in,
money to
flows
everyday
out.
Canadians.
These are
We have
all
cut
fancy words
GST.
that just
We
mean
cut GST.
that
We
you
are
want
introducing a
Canadians to
guaranteed basic
flow
income.
down as their teeth rot because you forgave to give them $34 billion. Do you
Let's
know how
listen to
many
the
teeth we
investments
can
that we have made
save
in
with
Canadians.
$34 billion? We can give every single child in Canada perfect dental care. You claim to stand for universal health care.
Do you realize that
all
our
you
dental
want
care
is
plan is in our budget?
pharmacare?
It is in
What
our
happens
plan.
when a kid can't
We're
see
already
the back of the
spending on that.
whiteboard? Do you want that kid to fail his school because he can't afford proper glasses? That's all I'm hearing from the Prime Minister.
All of that is already in the budget. What are you talking about? We are introducing those things. They are already in the budget. This is a surplus that we received by cutting corporate subsidies. That's
By
the only reason we
cutting,
received it.
cutting. That's
Do
the
you-
only
do you
word that comes
realize-
out of your mouth. You want to cut
Let's
taxes
talk about
and then you
investments then.
refuse to invest in the Canadians' future.
If you honestly want to listen to the investments that we've made, if you care about investments honestly and you're not lying to Canadians, let's talk about the per child tax credit. That's $4.3 billion
What
invested
investments
in
are you
Canadians.
talking
Let's
about?
talk
How
about
can you
roads.
invest
I
when
am
you
looking at the
stared
budget
Canadians
now.
right in the
Let's look
eye
at $1 billion
and said,
in
"Thank you for
roads.
Okay, gentlemen.
$34 billion.
Gentlemen,
I will not invest that."
gentlemen, thank you very much. That will be the end of that very passionate crossfire. Next up, Ask Qualitaker will be able to ask the question to People's Party leader, a game of power. The time begins when the question is asked. So,
In your opening statement, I do think that we agree on a lot of things like cutting taxes, balancing the budget, and cutting corporate subsidies. And I know that this is something that people in your party do support. So I'd just like to ask you, have you costed your budget plan and your policies?
We have actually not costed our budget. I won't lie to you, it has not been costed. However, that is the same level of work as the fake costings that we're seeing on the other side. In fact, good sir, let me show you my phone right now, because I'm on Indeed right now, and one of us is going to need to search for a job. So would you like our economic policies when we do that, or yours?
no
I don't think
props,
that our
please.
economic policies are all that different. We definitely do want a 4-day work week because that is evidence. You look at the United Kingdom, you look at the United States, and they have evidence that it works and that it increases revenue and GDP and it increases overall healthcare outcomes and it decreases costs in that system. It decreases suicides and it decreases burnout. This is proven. We're not going to do experiments with Canada. This is a proven fact and we know that it works. And we've also assumed the worst case scenario for uptake that no experiment has seen and that no country that has implemented this policy has seen. Now, we can't do this as a federal government, so we've assumed in our budget that only federal industries uptake the 4-day work week and only 50% do. And this is still the revenue and the growth that we get from that small amount. If we actually end up getting the full amounts that everyone else has seen and we aren't some outlier where we absolutely fail, then we will have a massive surplus and we will invest that, all of it, in Canadians because we know that we can afford that. We know our finances will be stable and our surpluses will be above $10 billion every single year. And those will go back to Canadians in the form of dividends through a sovereign wealth fund.
Do you know how to make a McFlurry, sir?
Why would I know how to make a McFlurry? I know how to make a budget, not a McFlurry. No one else knows how to make a budget. That's why the only budget that we've seen in the last several years was the budget that I presented.
I believe we had a budget in 2022. It has not been several years, but we're also still on the same footing because your budget did not pass.
If we form government, Canadians should vote for that budget. They saw
Well,
what
they
was in it,
saw
and they
what was
trusted
in
it,
that
and they
budget,
need
and
what was in it.
immediately your government fell. So what does that say about the budget itself?
Because other people want the budget for themselves, and we know that because we've heard everyone else
I don't know.
espousing the
Was
same
your
ideas and
budget
the same
brought to a
policies
referendum
that are in
or
our
something?
platform
How do you
and in our
know that
budget.
everyone wants everything?
I'm talking about people here
You're
today
throwing
talking
out
about policies
numbers.
that were
You're
already
throwing
in our
out a
budget
wish
and
list
are in
and
our
calling it a
platform.
budget, sir.
People, please calm down. Another very passionate crossfire. We like to see it, but it is over now. Okay, a game of power. You will be able to ask a question to Lady Aya next. The time begins when you ask said question.
I have to say, this is a pretty difficult one. I'm not very familiar
Yeah.
with Quebec fiscal plans, and I'd like to hear more about what you have to say, Aya. I'll just open the floor, just generally.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think certainly one level, it's not necessarily regarding fiscal policy as far as the budget, but we do, Bloc Québécois does support the, I don't believe it passed last term, but the conservative bill regarding immigrants having a basic knowledge of French, which I mean, I do think is, related to the economy, so I could leave it at that if you want to talk about
We
that.
can talk a bit about that because we also have a point on that in our platform. I believe it's to have newcomers to Canada be able to pass an English or French test. And I know that some people might view that as a bit controversial, but it makes sense to be able to know the language so that you're able to better integrate yourself into the country you're moving to.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, and this is also why, it was like 1 or 2 months ago, I also penned an opinion piece regarding the supporting Quebec's policy regarding university students having a basic knowledge of French. I think that for many of these students from across Canada and then also internationally, if they're going to be in our communities and with many of them staying within Montreal or elsewhere within Quebec, they should be actually investing time to be integrated in the community, not seek to take our resources and then just hide in their little bubbles. They should be part of the community, and actually, if they're going to enjoy our benefits, they should also be contributing that as someone who speaks the same language.
That one's a bit more difficult because we're starting to go into like how education funding is being allotted. I believe that what you're referring to was McMass, or I forget the university in Montreal, but how they were going to yes, McGill, how they were going to suffer dramatically from the lower amount of students that would go there because of the French requirements. I thank the member of the audience for their answer. I totally blanked there. I'm actually a Laurentian alumni.
I mean, I certainly think that that can happen. I don't disagree that is
time. That is time.
okay.
Thank you for that informative discussion. Okay, next up, Lady Aya, you may ask a question to Infamous Hole. The time begins now.
Wait, who?
Lady
Myself.
Aya asking a question to Infamous Hole, Alex.
Oh, okay. I mean, it is something that I mean, I guess I'll ask that the CCF mentioned. We have not seen a liberal budget since the government of Trudeau. Do you think that if elected as part of the government, you would deliver on the budget next term, seeing as we saw 2 liberal governments without a budget?
Well, I'm not a liberal myself. I was not part of the Liberal Party, and the Social Liberal Alliance is not the same party, but I believe that a Gamer Power did deliver a budget. It was a while ago. However, I am fully committed to delivering a budget that isn't financed by job experiments. I think that the numbers, the proposals I've given in my policy are going to stand if I have the privilege of forming a government. I can commit to that, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree as far as not agreeing with the CCF's 4-day work week. Let me see what else.
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
Well, I remember that when the Pirates passed their direct democracy bill, when they introduced one, you wholeheartedly supported it because you think it was good for Canada. But under that bill, 5% of Canadians can trigger a national referendum whenever they want. it's going to cost us up to $300 million every time that happens. Do you think that's good fiscal policy?
Well, I mean, I can't remember exactly what I said at the debate, but in general, I do support direct democracy, and I especially support the right of Quebec and Quebecois to secede. But I mean, I think in that case, it was more the principle of the matter. Um, there's many times where as a deputy, I've supported a bill that I may not agree wholeheartedly, but the principle I did, and that was the case here with the direct democracy bill. I may have not supported all the specifics, but I do think direct democracy is something that Bloc Québécois does support.
Okay. Well, my proposal is that we could take a page from the Americans' books and have ballot initiatives being held in conjunction with the general election so that we can increase turnout and save money in the process. If I was in the House, I would have proposed that, and I hope the territories will elect me again.
Okay.
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with, especially because there have been studies as
Fine.
far as when referenda
Excuse me.
are held by itself. Okay.
Excuse me. Thank you. Okay. Final classifier of the night will be Infamous Hole asking a question to Mr. Jack. The time begins when you ask the questions, dude.
All right, well, before I begin, I want to say, Jack, that next time you do a personal budget, you should definitely allocate some funds for a manners class. But my question is this. On your platform, you only have 4 points related to finances. How important do you think a balanced budget is, and what policies do you support to get us there?
I will take no lectures in manners from a man who wants to import American politics to Canada. Canada is a nation that stands tall on its distinct political system, and wanting to import an American style of politics is frankly un-Canadian. I will take no lectures in manners from such a person.
So, are you saying you think that we should cut all imports from the United States?
I am saying that it is important that Canada decides for itself. You
Well,
want to turn us into an American colony, I see. Just like every other liberal premier that we've had before you. Just like I've said, this party claims to be different, but they are just the same old establishment liberals. They have had years and years to fix your financial problems. And have they, or are you still living paycheck to paycheck, scraping by pennies just to get a can of tuna at Loblaws?
Well, I think that it's a very big misrepresentation. So I put the question to you again, since you're very passionate. How do you think, how important is a balanced budget and how will you get there?
How important is a balanced budget to you? Just like all the candidates up on this stage, and I am looking all of you in the eyes as I speak right now, all the words I hear out of your mouth are cut, cut, and cut. But never once has any of you said
not
the
true.
word invest. None of you have pledged how you're going to invest in Canadians' education, how you're going to invest in Canadians' healthcare, how
Well,
you're going to invest in Canada's future.
well, I think I welcome you to give me an example of what I said I was going to cut because I said I wanted to bring back corporate subsidies so that we can have renewable projects once
And
again.
once again, wasting money. Canadians spend their hard earned money on the government. They expect a return. And the establishment liberals want to give that money that you have given us to fund your healthcare, and they want to give it to Loblaws. They want to give it to Canadian Tire. I say we spend every dime we get on Canadians' future.
Well, I'm glad you have a lot of rallying calls. It's a big, very big shame that you haven't provided real concrete policy since the start of the debate. But
I'm ashamed that you haven't provided real concrete policy. What was that again? National Walking with the Bureaucrats Day? How is that a
Alright,
serious
alright,
policy
folks.
for Canadians?
Alright, folks. That's enough. The final classifier has concluded, and I would like to thank you all for your interesting contributions and discussions. We will now end a debate with closing statements. To begin, you will hear from the leader of the the leader of the People's Party of Canada, the Game of Power. You have 2 minutes to deliver a closing statement. Your time begins when you begin to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Canadian people have heard many different voices today, and weirdly enough, we matched up on a lot of points, a lot more than I would have thought at the beginning of the night. I would not have expected to sit here and have as many agreements as I did with the Bloc. I did not think that me and the citizens would go head to head against the CCF at points. Like, though we have some endorsements in this election, it appears that this debate has shown that no matter what happens during the election, we will have uh, some sort of grouping come together. To that point, let me reverse the Citizens Party's saying of cuts by saying something that we will invest in, I guess. And I believe the military was one of the ones on our platform. But we also plan on doing investments in public roadways to make sure that they're safe for people. Investments in public transportation. Like, we do care about high speed rail. Like, there are a lot of things that all of us together as parties agree with. And I'm happy that we got to give all of our points at this debate, even if it did get heated at times. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and have a good night, everyone.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Now, you will be hearing from, let me pull up my handy little sheet. We'll be hearing from Mr. Sass Politiker. The time begins when you begin speaking.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. I would like to just point out that everyone on this stage that has tried to claim that we don't have a backed up plan and a plan that's been cited and sourced has been lying. And it's because they don't themselves have a costed and sourced plan. They've even admitted that they don't. So let's talk about the sources. Let's talk about, firstly, the 4-day work week, which I don't think really matters because they've liked to hit on that because they think that it's going to scare people away. But let's talk about if we didn't have a 4-day work week and it didn't work at all, even though we're already assuming the worst case scenario on that policy in our budget. If we didn't have it, we would still balance the budget under the old government's plan in the next year. So we're still on track to fix our finances and have a massive fiscal turnaround, the biggest in Canadian history. But let's talk about some of our plans in this budget. We're planning to cut taxes by $14.9 billion, 5.5% off the second bracket from income taxes, cutting that bracket to 15%. We're going to double the GST credit. We're going to cut corporate taxes by 2% down to 13%. And we're also going to cut the small business tax 2 points down to 7%. We've already forgiven CEBA loans. But let's talk about investments that our government has made. We're investing $4.3 billion in the per child tax credit. We've invested billions of dollars in roads already, and we've increased funding in that regard. We've invested billions in public transit. We've invested billions in Indigenous governments, and we've increased that and indexed that for the first time to inflation and population growth. We've invested billions in transfers to addictions programs. We've increased funding for mental health programs, funding for expanded French language services, funding to provinces, municipalities for policing. I don't think anyone on the stage has actually read the budget. From their comments tonight, they don't understand it or they haven't read it. And I would wager that these are very smart people on the stage. I have a lot of respect for them. But it is obvious because of that that they actually have not read the budget, and they voted on the budget and they don't understand it. So Canadians need to realize that we have a costed.
Okay, sorry I had to cut you off, sir, but I had to because we have a very time limited situation. Next up, we will be hearing from Mr. Jack for his closing statement.
Canadians, hear me now. See me on this stage, standing up for you. Alongside me are many folks who wish to vie for the highest office in Canada. Each of them looking to get your vote. But hear me now. None of them want to do it for you. All of them are compromised by the wealthiest Canadians. That's why they want to cut the budget. Only a single party here stands for citizens. Only one party here wants you and your children to live long and healthy lives. On my far end over here, the so-called People's Party wants to abolish Health Canada and leave you on the streets with a broken arm and not enough money to pay for it. I have over here the establishment liberals. Though they will try to pull the wool over your eyes and change their names, we all know they're the same party that is incapable of ever changing anything. The CCF, they like to talk a big game with fancy numbers and all that, but we just know that they are a party that'll leave $34 billion lying on the House of Commons floor because they would rather do that than invest in your future. There is only a single party here today that stands for Canadians. It's the party with the letter C in it, the Citizens Party. No one else here on this stage. Let me flip through my notes and just make sure. I'd like to further reiterate, by the way, how ridiculous it was. Bureaucrats walking day, a helpline, fixing certain immigration controls. What is the Liberals Party real platform on healthcare? I'll tell you, it's the same as the People's Party plan for healthcare, to get rid of it. They want you to be quiet, all while your healthcare goes down in the bin just like it has forever. Same with
Alright,
the
thank you.
CCF. The
Thank you, Stu.
CCF has
Thank you,
never
Stu.
fixed healthcare. The People's Party.
Okay, next up, let's hear from Infamous Hole and the Social Liberal Alliance for his closing statement.
Well, I want to begin by thanking everybody who have attended this debate with me tonight and the host, the moderator. Democracy, however flawed it might be at times in Canada, is a valued part of our nation, and I encourage everyone to do their civic duty and vote when the time comes. I feel a great debt of gratitude towards my party. If we went from being newly registered to being misrepresented on national television, it must mean we're doing something right. And you know, one of my friends who's in showbiz once told me there's no such thing as bad publicity, and here we are. Tonight, even through the distortions and the mudslinging, I've done my best to present to you a comprehensive platform in all areas about the pressing need of Canadians. I cannot promise you the moon. I'm not going to finance my budget with a mirage. But if elected, I will return to the House and restore stability to our institutions again. I'm proposing a new deal for Canada, public spending initiatives, new trade deals, a larger international presence, and the use of our natural resources to help the world. I hope that I've earned your trust throughout this campaign, and I will act as a responsible party leader if so. Thank you very much, and good night.
Okay, excellent. Now we will hear from the person we heard from first. Lady Aya, you have the in the Bloc Québécois, you have the final closing statement.
Okay. Yeah, so we have heard tonight from all these other parties, and I still think that what I said at the beginning still rings true. I sort of echo the comments by the Social Liberal Party. I think there are some here that are very loud and very passionate, but I think what Quebec needs is not passionate rhetoric, but common sense commitment for politics and actually delivering for our communities. And I think the Bloc Québécois still stands as the one who, as the party who's most able to deliver for that. I think that, as I said a little bit before, I think that the extremes must be avoided here, and we must seek like I said, the common sense solution for politics. I do think that I do think that this debate demonstrated that.
Okay, okay, great. Thank you all for watching the CBC debate. I apologize for the 20-minute overrun, but I hope this educated Canadians on all of the options. I encourage all people to get out to vote tomorrow if you are eligible, and I would like to thank all leaders for joining us. We will see you again next election. Farewell.
Real quick, we'd like to
Out of
thank our
cannon.
sponsors at
Out of cannon.
Geico. We'd like to thank our sponsors at Geico. They help
Wait,
to
I have
save
one thing
50%.
to say. Y'all thought this
Geico.
would be a boring debate. You're welcome. I think this turned out very good, and I'm very happy with how it ended up.
There wasn't enough Geico
Mhm.
advertisements.
I'm fucking exhausted, to be frank.
I
It
fucking
was
exhausted
so
Yeah.
weird asking Aya questions.
Next
Yeah,
time,
don't
How
talk
LVC.
rude.
Yeah, love you, Aya, but I absolutely